This episode is brought to you by Next Level Gaming, located in Salem, Oregon. Take your gaming experience to the next level with their stellar inventory of Magic the Gathering singles, Warhammer 40k miniatures, and overall great customer service. Next Level Gaming. Take your gaming to the next level.
Here.
And this is Jeff. Welcome on board to another episode of the Triart Academy podcast, where it's always better to get good
rather than get wrecked.
This is the Future Sight series, where we will be looking at the newest set release, in this case, Ravnica Allegiance, and we will be mining it for competitive Commander Gold. Tell me, how do you feel about this set, Cole?
So far, I'm actually kind of impressed with what we got with this pile of gold we got this set around. After all, we got Shocklands are back, right?
Sure.
And you know what else? Shocklands being cheaper is something I could always agree with. Besides, we have 10 cards on our main list here. Not to mention that we have an entire side whole thing just full of honorable stuff that we could barely not even shake a stick at without it biting the stick in half.
Yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from. I mean, there's quite a bit of funsy stuff and honorable mentions. I mean, granted, none of this is going to be really competitive Commander applicable per se, but for example, Skewer the Critics in Modern, that looks hilarious as all get
Oh,
out.
yeah, no.
Deputy of Detention, always, a good thing to see Sphere of Detention on a creature. Biomancer's Familiar, Training Grounds on a creature.
Captive Audience for all the funsies.
Oh, sure. High Alert for all of those out there that play Arcades decks.
Yeah.
Judith the Scourge Diva as a sacrifice outlet for aristocrats. That looks hilarious.
Yeah, no. In-race Forerunners for your budget Crater Hoof.
Sure. Mortify as a reprint. Always happy to see that. Same with Junk Troller and Scrabbling Claws. Teysa Karlov as your Panharmonicon for LTBs.
Yeah, no, this list goes on.
Sure, yeah. And obviously we can't get to all of that. Because at the end of the day, you didn't come here to talk about any other format. We're here for competitive Commander. So with that being said, let's get into our first card, ladies and gentlemen. Wilderness Reclamation. This card right here, I see as a powerhouse bridge piece for Stax decks when they're dealing with not only their own Winter Orb and Static Orb effects, but also other opponents' Winter Orb and Static Orb effects.
Oh yeah, no, I see this thing pretty much being added in a litany of various different Stax decks, especially those that run Winter Orb, Static Orb, heck, even those that run Stasis.
I agree there. No, that is hot sauce right there. That's a great bridge piece, as, I've already even briefly mentioned, how it has the ability to help you walk around your own stacks.
Yeah, no. And speaking of another card I like to throw around, Rhythm of the Wild, it's just to trash those counter blue players.
I know you're on your Gruul kick, because, of course, if I'm not Gruul, then I must die, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're on that Rurik Thar stacks kick, and, I have a healthy respect for Rurik Thar stacks. I built my own version of Rurik Thar stacks, in fact, and have been really kicking people's teeth in multiple states with it. I see Rhythm of the Wild as a great hate piece against counterspell and or control players. The Riot mechanic in and of itself is hilarious.
Oh, Riot! Out of all the mechanics, this mechanic is yet one of the most simplest worded ones, yet at the same time, so much potential with this mechanic.
I agree. If you pair this with a card like Incubation Druid, all of a sudden, now you're positive mana, and that particular card is now a Gilded Lotus on a creature.
Yeah, no, it gets ridiculous.
Exactly. No, I see, a card like Incubation Druid as a budget version of Bloom Tender from Eventide. And Bloom Tender is how much now? $35, $40 plus?
Yeah, no. Rhythm of the Wild, and sticking with Rhythm of the Wild, of course, Rhythm of the Wild here offers us Riot, which, to those who have played Red, right, Mass Haste Enablers, right, the one problem about Mass Haste Enablers is that once you have one on board, the rest become dead cards.
Right.
But with Riot now, for instance, this is not just a haste enabler. This is also a permanent power buff.
Yep, not just power, but power and toughness. You're
Yeah,
totally right.
this is a permanent buff that not only goes along with this, so if you have one, if you could stack multiple triggers right on each other, it's like one gets one activation of haste, the rest when 1/1 counters. Oops. Did I break magic?
No, I don't know if you broke magic, but you definitely still came out on the higher end of things. Definitely. Yeah. You know, speaking of Gruul-related cards, another card that I wanted to talk to you about was Domri Chaos Bringer.
Yes, I had an eye on this guy for a while, and dude, this card is hot sauce.
Yes, it is. You know, I see a card like this possibly replacing Garruk Wildspeaker.
Oh, dude, yeah, no, hands down. I can see it easily. The fact is that his +1 allows you to cast Mana Dorks with haste, or you can cast some big fatty dude and make him even bigger.
Yep.
His -3, for instance, allows you to get allow you to look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 2 creature cards in your hand, put the rest in the bottom of the library in any order. Dude, you're coming out on top on this card no matter how you go about it. And you know what else? Oops, I played Massland D. What do? I go for his ultimate, which results in me getting an emblem. By the way, you can't interact with emblems.
Not very well, at least.
Not very well. I get 4/4 beast creature tokens with trample every instep. Oops.
Yeah, no, that's a GG if I ever saw one. Yeah, you're literally generating 16 power for every turn rotation. That's gotta be something right there.
Yeah, no, that's in most cEDH games from what I could see and play in it. That right there makes people to scoop.
Yeah, no, that's literally 2 to 3 turns, and you're starting to one-shot people, no problem.
Actually, within 2 rotations, you already have the power on board to one-shot somebody.
Yeah,
it's like, ugh.
That is pretty gross.
In fact, by turn 3, you probably should be able to just one-shot the table from that point on.
Right, and you know that's just the ult right there. Obviously, we're not talking about the plus or the minus, and the plus is very, very good for fighting through Mass Land D when you have no lands to target, which is why I think personally he's a contender to replace Garruk Wildspeaker.
Oh yeah, no.
And don't get me wrong, Garruk is a great walker. But when you have a walker like this with this kind of a power level, yeah, no, you have to take notice.
It's like Zyndagus just got improved.
By some respects, yeah, it has.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of being in the Gruul spectrum, let's look at Cindervines now.
Yeah, the last one of our little Gruul cards here. And Cindervines is a great little guy. He may not seem very, ominous with his power?
Yeah.
But he's a very under-the-radar type card that will definitely shake entire formats.
I concur. You know, I look at Cindervines and see it as not just an on-board hate piece, but also as a static disruption piece for people who want to play Storm decks, for example. You know, I look at a card like this and have a tendency to relatively compare it to something like Aura of Silence, for example.
Yeah.
Because of its ability to disrupt fast mana-oriented decks or anything along those lines. So a card like this, I see it easily being applicable in Blood Pod or even other Gruul variant stacks decks.
Oh, dude, no. I feel like I'm Billy Mays here. I think we're feeling like we're Billy Mays here. I'm Billy Mays here with a special TV offer. But wait, there's more!
Right? You're not wrong about that.
And speaking of, wait, there's more, Electrodominance!
Nothing wrong with cheating stuff into play, right?
Oh, dude, there's definitely nothing wrong. The absolute, cellar floor of this thing is that, oops, I cast 2 red mana. I cast my Wheel of Fate at instant speed. Oops.
Yeah, Hypergenesis, as you had mentioned in a previous conversation.
Yeah.
Living End.
Yeah.
Anything for free, pretty much, that you normally can't cast for 0 because it has no mana cost. You can cheat it into play with Electrodominance.
Not only that, all the 0-drop, all the packs. Right?
Yeah.
All the packs, if you felt like that Perspicuous or whatever. Instant speed rocks for 2 mana?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. You can drop a mana cryptid instant speed if you really want to. When I look at a card like this, though, I immediately think 2 mana. Demonic Tutor.
Demonic Tutor? Instant, it's like, was it? Diabolic Tutor? Instant speed Diabolic Tutor that pings something?
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems pretty alright.
pretty alright. That's pretty hilarious if you ask me. Demonic Tutor instant speed, go find ad nauseum, play ad nauseum at instant speed. Let's go ahead and storm off while we're at it.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, heck, even at 1 mana, what's the option you got litany of options at 1 mana.
Sure, Imperial Seal, Personal Tutor.
Soul Ring?
Sure, Soul Ring at the very worst.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of options here with Electrodominance. And the funniest part about this whole card is, even though it's a fireball, the fact is that it removes the timing restriction on your spells.
I agree. Yeah, no, it's very, very similar to As Foretold, but you get to control the timing of it.
Yeah. That's
absurdly powerful.
Yeah, no, red just got one of the biggest buffs it ever had in a while.
That's a shot in the arm if I ever saw one. But speaking of a shot in the arm, Smothering Tithe for white.
Yes, white and Boros needed a ramp spell.
Yeah.
They got it.
They definitely got it. So for those of you who are not familiar with Smothering Tithe, it's a 4 CMC, 3 and a white enchantment that says, whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2 colorless mana, or 2 generic rather. If they do not, you create a treasure token that says, sack this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your pool.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good.
I look at a card like this and I'm like, Time Twister, anyone? Wheel of Fortune?
Oops! I dropped 21 mana!
Yeah, no, I look at a card like this and it's like, imagine pairing it with Time Spiral. Sure, I'll take 7 new cards and another 6 lands on top of the 21 mana. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, no, there's some ridiculousness with this card. In fact, I'd see it pairing pretty well with one of our further down candidates.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in just a bit. But before we go on any further, I look at a card like Smothering Tithe, right? You play this for its 4 mana cost, and you go a full turn rotation. You're getting 3 of your 4 mana already back.
Free Lotus Petals?
You're getting free Lotus Petals. Now, God forbid if somebody drops a Null Rod, at which point, yeah, you're sitting there sad. But, I mean, still, you have the capacity, once you remove that Null Rod, to fully make use of that extra mana.
Yeah, no, that's cheap and easy mana if I ever heard of it.
Yeah, and it's continuously generating that excess mana.
By the way, funny part about it is, it avoids pretty much most mass board wipes.
It does. And speaking of mass board wipes and stacks related decks, I see a card like this being paired with Stasis as well.
Oh, dude.
I see a card like this just feeding directly into Stasis and just saying, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to sit here and play this game called No Magic, where we're going to sit here, look at each other, and not play Magic.
Yes. And I will be coming out on top eventually.
Eventually, right?
Unless your opponent blows up your Stasis.
Well, yeah, in that case, I'm a sad panda, and I should have a Force of Will in hand.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, speaking of sad pandas...
Mm-hmm.
Pteramander
is a hilarious little dork that I see being utilized with Edric turns, and along those same lines, Hydroid Krasis.
Yeah, no. Lesser focus on the Hydroid Krasis, for instance.
Yeah.
But the Pteramander, dude, this guy is literally a Delver of Secrets that's better.
Yeah, no, you're completely right, because Pteramander has the capacity to get stronger over time with the number of instants and sorceries that are ran. Typically, there's, 25, 26 different instants and sorceries?
Yeah.
And, of course, the ability on the Adapt mechanic has the ability to feed into what it's already trying to do.
Yeah. No, this little guy as a 1-drop is almost perfect.
Almost. I mean, that's why I also wanted to bring up Hydroid Krasis for Edric decks, because now you can use all that extra mana to gain back some of your life that you lost, as well as draw some extra cards. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with ever doing something like that.
And the funny part about it is, he comes into play as an XX, and he has Flample of all things.
Flample?
Flying and Trample.
Flample?
Yeah, Flample!
Leave it to Cole to come up with something intelligent and genius-like.
Flample is involved here. People.
Flying and trample is a relatively relevant thing.
Yeah.
When you are playing anything along the lines of Edric turns, you always want to be able to have some sort of evasion. And since the deck normally runs something like Tetsuko Misawa Fugitive, even having it as a 1/1 is still going to have you with the ability to, evade your flying opposition.
Yeah, no, there's really not many ways that both of these cards can't really fail in.
Yeah, exactly. But speaking of dudes getting nerfed and whatnot, let's move on to Verity Circle.
Verity Circle, this little card. Who knew we could get attacks on dorks?
I really, really like it. I mean, I could see this being paired with cards like Glare of Subdual, Tangle Wire, any sort of mass tap effect. I don't know, like Cryptic Command seems pretty funny.
It actually even offers its own mana sync outlet.
You know, I'm glad that it does that. Don't get me wrong. That in and of itself is a spicy little thing. But speaking of that, you know, I could see a card like this even being paired with something like Living Lands, for example.
Yeah, no.
And just tapping people's lands down and drawing cards as a result of it. I mean, it seems pretty funny.
Hell, even when they're tapping their own lands for mana, you still get profit from it.
Yeah, as long as they're creatures, definitely.
Yeah.
But, you know, with those cards being mentioned, notwithstanding the Shocklands, let's get into the really two big heavy hitters
the two possible new commanders. One that is kind of like just a new girl on the block that does the same old thing, but sometimes in some ways does it better than some of the older ones.
Yep.
And the new one that literally just takes what we know and turns it upside down.
Yeah, those cards that we're looking at are Lavinia, Azorius, Renegade, and Prime Speaker Vannifar.
And let's kick it off with the one that's really not really doing a whole lot, but offers their own spicy touch on it.
Yep.
Lavinia is an excellent stacks commander.
Yeah, you know, I see a card like this being paired with global cost reducers like Helm of Awakening, and copy enchantment effects, copy artifact effects, being able to copy Helm of Awakening in order to reduce the colorless costs or the generic costs of colorless cards so much so that they can't actually be cast without having them be countered.
So it's a one-sided cost reduction effect and a one-sided blowout on your opponents.
Right, and you know, you pair a card like this, for example, with cards like Dream Halls, for example.
Yeah.
And you just continue the gravy train. So, Dream Halls, Knowledge Pool, Omen Machine.
Hey, this almost reminds me of Teferi a little bit.
Teferi Major Zolfir.
Yeah.
You can run Teferi in a deck like this completely. I see mass land destruction spells like Armageddon, Ravages of War, and Sunder being paired in a deck like this.
Yeah, no, this deck almost builds itself.
It almost does, but there is one noticeable issue in blue-white when you're playing in any sort of a stacks environment that blue-white has a hard time doing, and that's having compact win conditions.
Yeah, which is not exactly their forte.
Exactly. So, I mean, in a deck like this, I could theoretically see Dramatic Scepter being implemented, ISO Reversal as we call it sometimes around here, Isochron Scepter with Dramatic Reversal being paired onto it. Speaking of copy artifact, you can then play copy artifact copying your Isochron Scepter and then throwing Swansong onto it.
Yeah.
And after having that excess mana generated, you can then start playing additional copies of Dramatic Scepter, countering it with your own Swans, and then basically swinging in for game.
Yeah. That or just beating face with big value cards like Sun Titan and even Azor. Although it's a little experimental, but...
I don't know how I feel about Azor, the Lawbringer. Sun Titan I can definitely see. Frost Titan is along those same lines as far as value, although I would probably be more inclined to run something like Consecrated Sphinx instead at the 6th spot.
But hey, though, nonetheless, though, it's like we got the time.
Sure, no, and that's one of the big issues that Azorius decks have a problem with is closing out games effectively. In fact, one card that I've been commenting on off and on for other formats has been Approach of the Second Sun, and I've been seeing deck lists popping up online that have been implementing that particular card, Approach of the Second Sun, as a potential win condition. Which is not a bad win condition per se. Now, in the context of competitive Commander, normally it's a bad win condition. I would never normally use a card like that.
No.
But in an archetype like this, where you can inevitably stall out the game, and this kind of a card can, on the outside chance, I'm not saying that it will, but on the outside chance, could possibly see some fringe play as a result of this new Commander.
Another one I'd also like to point out, possibly even see play, Azor's Elecutors.
Azor's Elecutors is actually pretty funny. I did contemplate that, not very much, but the only concern that I even see remotely for Azor's Elecutors is that in the online meta explicitly, a lot of decks seem to be leaning more towards stacks, especially Blood Pod.
Yeah.
So, since a lot of people are wanting to beat face, Azor's Elecutors may or may not be as prevalent for Lavinia decks that are using Azor's Elecutors, but for situations where you have the entire board on lockdown and you have cards like Kismet and Frozen Aether already out on the field and creatures can't swing, notwithstanding stasis,
yeah,
I could see Azor's Elocutors really doing some work here.
Yeah, no, there's options here, and I'm hoping to see what people brew with this commander.
Yeah, I really am too.
Besides, talking about brewing and going hog wild, Prime Speaker Vannifar. This is wild.
What? What?
Yeah.
Let's see why you break magic.
Blood Pot is in your command zone? What?
Birthing Pot is a commander in a command zone. Yes, thank you. I have been in the cEDH Discord channels related to Vannifar when I first saw her get spoiled. And there have been several different routes that have been discussed via not just Discord, but also Reddit. And some of those lines include Protean Hulk lines, the inclusion of cards like Elite Arcanist and Spellseeker, using Elite Arcanist as a budget Isochron Scepter in conjunction with Benefactor's Draw and Dramatic Reversal. So, yeah, there are some pod lines that are there available. I mean, I came up with a pod line myself personally that involved potting from just a fetch land with Dryad Arbor all the way up to Protean Hulk and just automatically getting there.
Yeah, no, there's a bunch of them, and hell, there's even a couple stacks. I think there's a stacks list or two that's running around where they just plan on using her as a
value, yeah.
Yeah, like Yisan is.
Yeah, as a value engine, exactly. There are somewhere in the neighborhood of about 9 or 10 different lists currently on the cEDH Discord as of the time of this recording. One of those lists includes a Paradox Engine pod crossover variation of all things, if you believe that. A couple Protean Hulk variations. There's an Elf Baller variation floating around or two. Variations, like I said, including Elite Arcanist as a pseudo-Isochron Scepter. But, I look at a card like this, and there's a couple weaknesses that immediately come to mind, which has me a little bit worried about this card. Most notably, Cursed Totem, Linvala Keeper of Silence, Grafdigger's Cage, Stranglehold and or Mindlock Orb effects, Kismet effects, and especially Containment Priest.
Yeah, no, and those ones in particular are some of the biggest problems here. Not to mention a litany of other problems with this type of deck. Not to mention that since most of these lists, right, are really actually chaining together about 14 different cards into one series of activations.
Yeah, no, some of those lists have been chaining together anywhere between 8 and 12 cards on the lower end. Yeah. Some as many as 15.
Yeah, no, it's the problems here, but if you ever get this off, like
Yeah.
if you ever draw your God hand, this is almost sporadically stupid.
Yeah, no, I see cards like Yavimaya Hollow and the other blue land that untaps creatures. Minimo, School at Water's Edge.
Yeah. Well, not to mention that one elf land too from way back over in was it
Wirewood Lodge.
Yeah, Wirewood
I was
Lodge.
thinking Yavimaya Hollow for some reason.
Yeah.
Forget I said that.
Yeah.
No, Wirewood Lodge, Minimo, School at Water's Edge. Any of those two lands which would untap Vannifar.
Not to mention Intruder Alarm.
Intruder Alarm, Faces of the Past. Good call on that.
Yeah. Just there's a lot of options here for to make a deck like this to actually work.
Oh, most definitely. You know, I'm happy to see a card like this finally exist. I don't know if it'll ever get banned in Modern. I doubt it will. But, you know, as far as competitive Commander is concerned, I see Hulk Pod variants eventually being brewed within the next 6 months, actually starting to take shape and form at LGSs within the Oregon, Washington, Idaho area, and really starting to make waves in the competitive community.
Yeah, no, I think it might take a little bit for the list to get refined.
Sure.
But I think there will definitely be lists running around. I think the whole stacks list that that's been cooked up on it might actually be might seem to be more prevalent.
Yeah.
Because after all, it's like at that point you're running as a utility commander.
Yeah, at that point you're running it as a pseudo yeast sign. You're just fetching up your necessary stacks pieces.
Yeah.
But still, nonetheless, I'm happy to see this commander be printed, this new legendary rather, and so that way we can see what the floor and the ceiling for this kind of a commander is. I see really big things happening for this commander.
At the very least.
Yeah, and that's not counting Lavinia, which I'm already in the process of brewing and building.
You're already looking for the championship promo.
Yeah, I'm already looking for the championship promo for Lavinia, Azorius, Renegade. That art is so freaking beautiful. And I'm saying this as an ad nauseum Storm pilot, okay? That tells you something. Don't get me wrong, I always have a soft heart for ad nauseum and Storm as an archetype. You know, when I see a gal like this, Lavinia, it's like, you know, kill her on sight now.
The perfect love-hate relationship.
Right. What was that about Stockholm Syndrome? No, jokes aside, I mean, domestic violence jokes also aside. I see a gal like this really wrecking face at competitive commander tables who are especially not prepared for stacks.
Yeah, no, it's like Heroic Thar.
Yeah. Don't remind me about that 15 damage that I took to win.
The fact that you pulled it out on less than 15 life?
I pulled it out on I'd like to say it was about 24, 25 life from ad nauseum. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever play an ad nauseum deck, please, for the love of God, don't ever ad nauseum below 35 life if you can avoid it. It sucks.
But so far, that's what we have on tap for the day.
Yeah, that's what we have on tap as far as the cards that we think are going to be seeing competitive commander play that are of competitive commander viability, that are gold, for lack of a better phrase. We will also be posting other cards that we think are lousy, funsy, and are worth a mention, that are at least at a very bare minimum worth honorable mentions. With that being said, it has been a pleasure doing this episode here with you, Cole. We are the Triart Academy, and as always, it's always
better to get good rather than get wrecked.